Snow blanketed New York that night, falling slow and steady like a secret the city was trying to keep. The streets shimmered under flickering lamps, hushed beneath layers of white. The wind whispered between the tall glass towers, sharp and cruel, the kind of cold that seeps through coats and bones alike. Michael Reynolds, 32, stepped out of the towering building on Park Avenue, his polished shoes crunching against the ice-dusted pavement. He was the youngest CEO to dominate Wall Street, the man people described as a machine in a tailored suit. Precision, logic, and control were his armor. But tonight, something in him resisted the routine. He waved off his driver and turned away from the car. Instead of warmth and leather seats, he chose the cold, maybe to quiet the noise inside his mind. He turned down a dimly lit block near his hotel. The snow crunched under his steps when the flicker of an old street lamp caught his eye. Beneath it, a small shape lay curled up on a metal bench. He stopped. It was a child. A little girl, no older than 4, bundled in a coat far too large for her, its sleeves swallowing her hands. Her hair was tangled, her cheeks pink and raw from the cold. Her lips were turning blue. She was either asleep or trying to be. A wave of alarm rose in him. Without thinking, Michael crouched beside her and touched her shoulder lightly. "Hey," he said softly. "Do you have a home? It's freezing out here. Let me take you somewhere warm." The girl stirred. Her eyes blinked open, large, glassy, and clear in the dark. She looked at him with no fear, no surprise, only quiet trust. "My mommy went to find dinner," she said in a voice so small it barely carried. "But I'm not scared. You're here now. You're the miracle, right?" That word, miracle, hit him harder than it should have. She said it like it was obvious, like she had been waiting for him. Michael, who built empires from numbers and logic, suddenly felt the walls inside him crack. The girl sat up slowly and reached into her old backpack. She pulled out a crumpled photograph and held it up to him. "This is my mommy," she said. "She said she'd be back before the snow covers my shoes. Can you wait with me until then?" Without a word, Michael slipped off his heavy wool coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. The coat swallowed her small frame, its warmth almost too much. She sighed, sinking into it like a cloud. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Laura," she murmured, nestling deeper into the coat's warmth. "Nice name," he said. His voice softened. She looked back down at her shoes. "Me and mommy stay here sometimes. It's not that bad. The light helps me sleep." Michael's eyes scanned the empty street. No one in sight. Just wind, snow, and silence. He wanted to call someone, the police, a shelter, anyone. But he didn't. Instead, he stayed. He sat beside her. He wasn't sure how long they sat there, his arms trembling slightly from the cold. But the girl beside him looked peaceful now, like his presence alone made the night less cruel. "Do you really think I'm a miracle?" he asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Laura nodded. "Mommy says miracles are people who show up when no one else does." Michael exhaled slowly, his breath fogging into the night air. For the first time in years, he felt warmth that didn't come from success or money, a warmth that came from being human. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the wind brushing against the lamp post. The world around them felt suspended, time frozen in snow. Michael checked his watch out of habit but quickly realized how meaningless it felt here. For once, there was nowhere he needed to be. He looked at the little girl again. Her small fingers peeked out of the sleeves of his coat, curled tightly against the cold. A faint smile rested on her lips, the kind children wear when they trust the world without question. Michael had always believed in logic, not fate. But this moment, this unexpected encounter under a flickering streetlight, felt like it was written long before he arrived. He stood up and took a few steps, scanning the street corners. No one was coming. He felt torn. Stay and protect her or go and find help. But each option carried its own kind of fear. What if he left and she vanished before he returned? He sighed and returned, his shoes leaving sharp prints in the snow. When he sat again, Laura looked up sleepily and said, "You left. I thought you changed your mind." "I'd never leave you alone," he said softly. Not until your mom comes back. She blinked slowly, then smiled. That's what my mom used to say to me too. The snow thickened. The streetlight began to fade behind a curtain of white. Michael could barely feel his fingers now, but he didn't move. Something deep inside told him that this moment mattered, that leaving would mean more than just walking away. Do you believe in angels? Laura asked suddenly. Michael hesitated. I'm not sure, he admitted. She nodded thoughtfully. Mommy says they look like regular people, but you can tell when you meet one, because they don't walk past you when you need them. Her words pierced through him like a quiet truth. Maybe angels didn't have wings or halos. Maybe they were just people who stayed when everyone else walked away. The cold deepened, and Michael's mind drifted between exhaustion and reflection. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about meetings or markets. He was thinking about how fragile life was, how easily people disappeared, how some never came back. He whispered, almost to himself, I'll keep you safe tonight. Laura nodded, closing her eyes again. I know, she murmured. That's what miracles do. And there, under that dying streetlight, two strangers, one weary of the world and one too young to understand it, found something neither had been searching for. Warmth. And the beginning of everything that would follow. The woman in the snow. The night deepened, and the snow thickened like a curtain closing over the city. Michael stayed on the bench, his coat wrapped tightly around the little girl. Her small frame trembled beneath it, her breath coming out in faint clouds of white. He checked his watch past midnight. The streets were almost empty now. Only the hollow echo of the wind moved between the frozen buildings. He wanted to call for help, but something about the silence made him hesitate. The city, usually roaring with noise and light, felt like it was holding its breath. There was a strange peace in the quiet, the kind that made time slow down. Then he heard it, soft footsteps crunching in the snow. He turned. A figure was moving toward him from the end of the street. At first, it was just a blur through the falling snow. Then, slowly, it became clear. A woman, barefoot, her long black hair tangled in the wind. She wore a thin white dress that fluttered against her pale skin, far too light for this freezing night. Michael stood. His instincts told him something was wrong, but he couldn't move. The woman's steps were slow, deliberate, each one pressing deep into the snow before fading away behind her. When she was close enough for him to see her face, he froze. There was sorrow in her eyes, but not fear. It was a sadness that felt ancient, endless. She stopped just a few feet away and spoke softly. Is she warm? Her voice barely rose above the wind, fragile and trembling, but clear enough to slice through the night. Michael hesitated. Your daughter. The woman nodded. Her lips trembled, forming a faint, broken smile. She waited for me. Michael swallowed hard. You left her here? In the cold. The woman looked down, brushing snow from her bare arm. I didn't mean to, she said. I tried to come back sooner. But the storm. Her voice faded. The storm took me first. Michael frowned, unsure what that meant. She walked past him and knelt by the bench. Her hand hovered over the little girl's cheek, her fingers trembling. Not from cold, but emotion. Then she touched the child. The air changed instantly. The bitter wind softened. The snow around them seemed to stop falling. It was like the world itself paused to listen. The woman whispered something, her voice breaking as she spoke. The girl stirred but didn't wake. Her breathing steadied, and a faint warmth returned to her cheeks. The woman looked up at Michael again. She'll be all right now. And as she spoke, the snowlight around her began to glow faintly, a shimmer that moved like moonlight through mist. Michael blinked, unsure if what he was seeing was real or just his mind playing tricks in the cold. The woman smiled faintly, a soft, tired smile that carried both relief and sorrow. You took care of her, she whispered. Thank you. Michael took a cautious step forward. Who are you? Her eyes met his. I was her mother once. The words echoed inside his head long after she said them. He wanted to speak again, to ask what she meant. But she was already stepping back. Each step she took seemed to erase her from the world. "Wait," Michael called out, his voice trembling. "Don't go." But the woman only smiled again, that same peaceful, haunting smile. "Take care of her," she whispered. "Tell her I never stopped trying to come back." Then she was gone. The silence that followed was heavy, too heavy. Michael's breath came out in ragged bursts. His heart pounded against his ribs like a drum. He turned toward the child. She was still asleep, but her cheeks were warm now, and her lips no longer pale. Michael knelt beside her, brushing the snow from her hair. The locket caught his attention. It was half buried in the snow, faintly gleaming. He picked it up, brushing off the frost. Inside was a tiny picture of the same woman. Michael's breath hitched. He stared at it for a long moment, unable to move. The pieces began to fall into place in his mind. The woman, her words, the storm. It wasn't a coincidence. She had been searching for her daughter, even beyond death. Michael closed the locket gently and slipped it into the girl's hand. He stayed there until dawn, afraid to move, afraid that if he did, the peace of the moment would vanish like her spirit. By the time the first rays of sunlight touched the street, the city began to wake again. Michael looked around. It was as if nothing had ever happened. No sign of the woman, no trace of her presence, except for the warmth still lingering around the child. He took a deep breath, realizing that the world sometimes hides miracles in its quietest hours. The woman in the snow was gone, but her love remained, silent, eternal, and pure. The endless tracks. The next morning, Michael woke to the sound of distant rumbling, soft at first, then louder, like thunder trapped underground. He rubbed his eyes and looked outside. The snow had stopped, leaving the city coated in white stillness. But beneath that silence, he heard it again, a low, metallic hum echoing from the distance. Curiosity tugged at him, that same uneasy feeling that had followed him since last night. He dressed quickly and stepped outside, each breath turning into a puff of fog. The tracks ran through the outskirts, places the city had long forgotten. As he approached, the cold grew sharper, biting into his skin like a warning. He reached the railway crossing, a rusted sign barely visible under ice, reading East Line, out of service. Michael frowned. The line had been shut down for decades. No trains ran here anymore. And yet, the sound was there again, the unmistakable rattle of metal wheels on steel. He took a hesitant step forward, his boots sinking deeper into the icy ground. The air felt strange, heavy, electric, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then, through the mist, a light appeared, golden, soft, and moving toward him. Michael froze. The train glided silently down the tracks, not making a single sound. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, old, elegant, and strangely beautiful. As it drew closer, Michael realized something was terribly wrong. It wasn't slowing down. Instinctively, he stepped back, shielding his face from the blinding light of the approaching engine. Then, just like that, it was gone. Michael gasped for breath, his heart pounding so loudly it echoed in his ears. He looked down. Where the train had passed, the snow had melted in two perfect lines. He stood there for what felt like hours, staring into the distance, waiting for something, anything, to make sense. But the world gave him no answers, only the soft whisper of wind returning once more. As Michael turned to leave, he noticed something lying beside the rails. A small, frozen flower. He knelt and picked it up, brushing away the snow. It was fresh, impossibly fresh. And engraved faintly on one of the petals was a symbol, the same one from the little girl's locket. The realization sent chills racing down his spine. The tracks, the train, the woman, they were all connected. Somehow he was part of it now. The wind howled louder as Michael began to walk along the tracks, the flower clutched tightly in his hand. Each step echoed faintly, as though the ground remembered every soul that had ever walked this path. He didn't know where the tracks would lead, only that something was pulling him, like an invisible thread tugging at his chest. The city was long behind him now. The world felt emptier with every mile. He passed a half-buried train sign, its letters faded, Miller's Crossing, last stop. The words sent a shiver down his spine. He had never heard of such a place. Further down the track, he noticed something strange. A faint trail of footprints, small and light, leading ahead of him. He followed them, quickening his pace despite the biting wind. The tracks began to bend slightly, curving toward a dense line of trees. He hesitated for a moment at the edge of the woods, then stepped inside. Inside, everything was still, unnaturally still, as if time itself refused to enter. And then, from somewhere ahead, came the softest sound, the voice of a woman singing. Michael froze, his heart thundering. The melody was the same one the little girl had hummed before she vanished. He followed the song, moving deeper into the woods until he reached a clearing. Sitting there, dressed in white, was a woman. Her hair glowed like moonlight. "Hello," Michael called softly. "Are you okay?" He took a cautious step forward. "I saw your daughter last night," he whispered. When she turned around, Michael's breath caught in his throat. It was her, the woman from his dream. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly, her voice echoing from everywhere at once. "I don't understand," Michael replied. "What is this place?" "The place between," she said, "where souls wander before they fade." Michael's eyes widened. "Then that train, it was real?" The woman nodded slowly. "It comes for those who cannot let go." She looked down, her hands trembling as she held a small locket, the same one the little girl had carried. "My daughter boarded it long ago," she whispered. "I stayed behind, hoping someone would bring her back." Michael's heart sank. "I saw her. She was lost." The woman smiled weakly. "Then she found her way, and now so must you." The rumble of the phantom train grew louder again, this time much closer. Michael shielded his eyes as the sound filled the air. The screech of brakes, the hiss of steam. When he looked again, the woman was gone. Only the locket remained, resting on the bench. He picked it up and felt warmth radiating through his glove. For the first time, the cold didn't hurt. Then, somewhere beyond the trees, the faint sound of the train faded into silence once more. Michael looked up at the sky. For the first time in years, he smiled. He turned back toward the city, leaving the tracks behind, but carrying the locket close to his heart. The return to the city. Morning broke gently over the horizon, the kind of light that felt hesitant, as if afraid to disturb what the night had left behind. Michael trudged back toward the city, the cold still biting at his cheeks but his heart strangely warm. In his pocket, the locket pulsed faintly, as though alive, its warmth guiding him home. The city skyline emerged through the haze, tall and silent, like sentinels guarding forgotten memories. He hadn't realized how quiet the city had become. No cars, no chatter, just the echo of his boots on the frozen ground. He passed the bridge again, the same bridge where the girl had stood. He stopped at the spot where he'd first seen her. The snow there was untouched now, as if she had never been. Michael knelt down, brushing the snow gently aside. Beneath it, he found a single silver hairpin. He smiled faintly, closing his fist around it. "Thank you," he whispered. The air felt lighter now. The cold wasn't cruel anymore. It was calm, like the city itself was finally breathing again. As he walked deeper into the city, faint traces of life began to return. An old cafe stood at the corner, its windows fogged, but a faint light glowed inside. He pushed open the door, the bell above it jingling softly, a sound that felt almost unreal. Behind the counter stood the same old man who always worked there, wiping down a cup as though nothing had changed. "You're out early," the man said. "Haven't seen you since yesterday morning." Michael paused. Yesterday morning. But to him, it felt like he had lived through a lifetime since then. "Yeah," he replied softly. "It's been a long night." He sat by the window, watching the snow melt slowly from the trees outside. The city was alive again. Not bustling, not loud, but breathing quietly, peacefully. For the first time in years, Michael didn't feel like a ghost among them. He reached into his pocket and opened the locket. Inside, the picture had changed. He felt tears sting his eyes. Somehow, he knew they were both at peace. Outside, the morning light grew stronger. The snow was beginning to melt, revealing the city beneath reborn. Michael took one last sip of coffee and smiled. The locket rested against his heart, glowing faintly as if it, too, remembered. The streets of New York slowly began to hum again, like a record player coming back to life after years of silence. Michael wandered aimlessly, drawn by instinct more than reason, following the echoes of a world he'd once known. Each street he turned down seemed both familiar and strange, like he'd lived 1,000 lifetimes within them. He could almost hear her laughter in the wind, soft, distant, carried by the rhythm of the city's heartbeat. Somewhere in the distance, church bells began to ring. Not loud, but steady and pure. Michael followed the sound until he reached the small chapel on Fifth Avenue, the one he'd once passed every day without noticing. Inside, candles flickered in long rows, their flames trembling like tiny souls remembering. He took a seat at the back pew and bowed his head, though he wasn't sure if he was praying or just trying to breathe. A soft voice broke the silence, an old priest standing near the altar. "You've come a long way," the priest said, "but you don't seem lost." Michael looked up, startled. "Do I know you?" The priest smiled faintly. "Perhaps once. In another time." For a moment, Michael felt a strange peace wash over him, a warmth that didn't belong to this cold world. He reached into his coat and pulled out the locket, setting it gently on the pew beside him. The priest nodded toward it. "That light, it's a reminder. The ones we lose never truly leave." Michael smiled faintly. "I think I finally understand." Outside, the snow had stopped falling. The clouds drifted apart, revealing a clear blue sky. Michael stepped out of the chapel and stood on the steps, eyes closed, breathing in the morning air. The city was alive again, a symphony of horns, footsteps, and laughter echoing through the streets. Michael turned down the street toward his old apartment, his steps light, his soul unburdened. Every sound, every color, every heartbeat of the city felt different now. He finally understood that the world hadn't changed. He reached his building and stopped for a moment, looking up at the familiar red bricks and narrow windows. As he entered, he glanced at the mirror in the hallway, and for the briefest second, he saw her standing beside him. Then she was gone, leaving only light behind. He whispered softly to the empty room, "Goodbye, and thank you." Outside, the city thrived beneath a new dawn. The world had moved on, and so had he, the last passenger. Night returned to the city like a slow tide, quiet, heavy, and filled with unspoken memories. Michael found himself walking again, not sure where he was heading, only that something was calling him. He passed the old train station, long abandoned, its doors rusted and its windows half-shattered by time. Something about it drew him closer, as if the station itself remembered him. He stepped through the broken entrance, crunching over shattered glass and frozen leaves. The silence was deep, not empty, but watchful. Then he heard it, the distant rumble of a train. Impossible, he thought. No trains had passed through here in years. Through the fog, he saw headlights, bright, white, and slow-moving, cutting through the darkness. Came to a stop without a sound. The doors opened, releasing a faint breath of warm air scented with something sweet, like old memories. A conductor stood at the entrance, dressed in an immaculate navy coat and white gloves. "Good evening," the conductor said, his voice carrying an odd warmth. "You're right on time." Michael hesitated. "Right on time for what?" "For your journey," the conductor replied. "The final one." Michael felt a chill run through him. I think you have the wrong person." The conductor shook his head gently. "We never have the wrong passengers. Only those who arrive late or right on time." Michael's heart raced. Every instinct told him to turn away. But something in the conductor's gaze felt peaceful. He looked back toward the city, distant, fading, the skyline swallowed by fog. Then he remembered the words the priest had said, "The ones we lose never truly leave." Michael took a deep breath and stepped toward the train. As soon as he crossed the threshold, the cold disappeared. The carriage stretched endlessly, rows of velvet seats bathed in a golden glow. He recognized some of them, faces from another life, smiling faintly as he passed. At the very end of the carriage, near the window, sat a woman in white, her hair glinting like silver under the light. Michael froze. It was her, the woman from the snow. "Hello, Michael," she whispered. "You made it." He tried to speak, but no words came, only tears. The train began to hum softly, a melody like wind chimes and waves blending together. "Where does this train go?" he asked at last. She smiled faintly. "Home." The train shuddered once and began to move, not on tracks, but through light. Michael closed his eyes, the warmth of her hand steady and real. The train glided silently through a sea of light, not the light of bulbs or stars, but something alive, something ancient. Michael watched the patterns dance, unable to tell whether they were moving or he was. He felt no fear, no confusion, only the sense that everything, every question, every ache was finally quiet. "Where are we going?" he asked softly, though part of him already knew. She looked at him, her eyes gleaming like water under moonlight. "To where all stories end," she said, "and where some begin again." He blinked slowly, letting her words settle. "And after that?" She smiled faintly. "After that, you decide." Michael exhaled. It was strange, the idea of choice here beyond life and time. He glanced around. Every seat was now filled, not by strangers, but by faces he had known across his life. They didn't speak, yet he understood this was not goodbye. The woman in white stood, her figure glowing brighter now, as if her form were slowly merging with the light itself. "It's time," she whispered. "The last stop." Michael stood too. The floor beneath him thrummed with energy, gentle but firm, like the pulse of the world's heart. As they approached the horizon, the light grew warmer, shifting from silver to gold, then to something beyond color. He felt his body growing lighter, not vanishing, but changing, as though shedding a weight he didn't realize he'd carried. The woman turned to him once more. "Do you remember the night in the snow?" He nodded slowly. "You were there." She stepped closer, placing her hand over his heart. "I always was." The train began to slow. The hum beneath their feet faded into silence. "Will I remember this?" Michael asked, his voice trembling with hope. Her expression softened. "You won't need to. What's meant for you never leaves." He wanted to speak again, but no words came, only gratitude, a kind that filled every part of him until there was nothing left to say. The train doors opened. Beyond them, not a station, not a platform, but a vast expanse of light that stretched infinitely in every direction. The passengers rose silently, one by one, walking into the light without fear. Michael looked at the woman one last time. "Is this goodbye?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, just homecoming." He stepped forward into the light, and the world melted away. Somewhere in the city, a new dawn began. The snow melted on empty streets, and the first bird sang. And on a park bench, a small silver locket rested, its surface warm, glowing faintly under the rising sun. The journey had ended, or maybe it had just begun again.